Hey guys, this is going to be our first Q&A that we'll be taking questions from the community over the course of Reddit and our forums and whatnot. And today we've gathered a bunch of them from our forums and Reddit. And yeah, we're going to just get straight into this and see if we can clear up a couple issues that you guys have had and questions that you've thought of and processes that we need to go through. So first of all, is there an updated roadmap for the major game milestones right the way through the BR and MMO mode?
So I think this question comes because on our original website we had a roadmap page which talked about a number of things we intended to do in each month kind of towards the end of the year. The reason we decided to move away from having that as a kind of thing on our website and how we talked to the to everyone in the community is because since then we've really adjusted our focus to having really effective regular weekly updates, and we've kind of been building both technology and how the team kind of works together in a way where we can be really great at delivering kind of regular content updates and being quite smart about how we react to kind of feedback and seeing the effects of what we put in the game. And because of all of this kind of focus and how rapid our iteration cycle is, kind of saying what we're going to be doing like 2 months down the line is kind of something we could still do, but at the end of the day, right, we'll be learning stuff so rapidly that in fact we might want to change our plans for a couple months' time. And so we want to put the priority on sharing with you what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks, because there'll be so much in that anyway, and sort of making it clear that we're listening to you and what we're putting in kind of on that more rapid timeline. So we've mentioned that we do have kind of core updates and rapid updates. The rapid ones we're looking at doing weekly, core every 1 to 2 months, and so we'll still be talking about that. But doing anything further with the roadmap, I think is like something we've moved away from, because I think the new process makes a lot more sense. It enables us to kind of be far more consistent and data driven, so that we can give you much more kind of accurate and detailed idea of what we're doing in a 1 to 2 week period than we could if we kind of just gave you the rough milestones. So just kind of being more involved with the community means that let's not talk about kind of too much about the next kind of 6-12 months, other than there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen, and we'll focus on talking about like the details for the next couple of weeks. I guess another question that's kind of come up around kind of the major milestones is about how the Forge and the game type we're building relates to kind of the launch of the game and the kind of the game modes that will happen in the final version of Mavericks. So our whole new approach and what we've changed is that we are now no longer saying yet the date at which we're going to launch the game in full. Very shortly and before the end of the year, we will, of course, we're doing the Forge and we're going to be expanding that out to the public anyway. We see the Forge as basically us building a first game type, a 1,000 player battle royale game type. And that's what we're going to be talking about and focusing on with the community for the next few weeks, until the point at which we feel that's kind of ready and that we've like seen that process through. The launch version of Mavericks will then still have these other game types, and this process will continue, as in we will still do regular updates. We'll still evaluate what the community thinks is best, and also fundamentally what people are playing, right? Not just kind of what a minority of people say is good, but fundamentally what people want to play. And because we set up systems that enable us to do this so rapidly, we'll be able to test out all of these different game modes we've talked about, the different varieties you might be interested in, whether it's first person, third person, whether it's to do with how people drop into the map, how many players in the game, and we can support up to 1,000 players dropping into the game in one go. Like the Mavericks will be able to do that.
We are questions about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I should say that with this upcoming Forge launch initially, that we will be, still testing a few fundamental pieces of technology, and we might ramp, some numbers up over the course of a couple of weeks rather than just kind of throw everyone in one go. Although one thing that has been asked that we need to clarify is, there were some mentions of whether all founders would get to access the game in one go.
The 1,000 player stress test that it has since been dubbed in the Discord was something that was brought up a fair bit.
So we've communicated when we'll launch the Forge, and that's what we're aiming for all founders initially. That doesn't mean we won't necessarily be trying out, stress tests, but that's something which we're doing with a number of people internally and testing.
So just to clarify, there is no longer a 1,000 player invite for certain founders before other founders.
Not in what we've announced. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't consider that, a few days before, if we thought it was the right thing to do, that we might select a few people in randomly, but that's not something that we're committed to doing right now. And, to be fair, I need to talk to the team next week about the readiness and where we're at. We'll communicate that to the community too. If we feel like we need some kinds of tests, we might potentially still go that route, but no, at the moment, that's not the case. And we'll be launching kind of to all founders. If we feel that, a load of founders have flooded in, there may be a cap in concurrent players, but we're trying to set that high enough so that it doesn't, mean that you have to wait to play if you're a founder. Obviously, not all founders are going to just decide to play immediately at the same time. We'll be able to handle that if they do, but we might require you kind of to wait, but we don't see that being a problem. As I said, basically the first couple of weeks, of course, as with any kind of big launch of a new platform, come with a number of unknowns, and so we will focus on getting a core, consistent, stable base and expanding it out. So there might be a couple adjustments to how many people can play, let in, just for the first week or two. But at the moment, what we're expecting is that we'll enable all founders access, and there will be no kind of need for previous tests. We're doing a lot of that internally right now anyway.
Excellent. All right. Question number 2. With the player drop being scattered through the game, is it still possible to have 1,000 players in a server at once, or will the plane drop the next set of players when the kill count gets down from, for example, no more than 200 players alive at any point, but 1,000 players over the course of the entire game?
Yes, so we're looking at 1,000 players over the course of the entire game. That's not because we can't drop 1,000 people in at the beginning, because that is something we're going to support, but there are a number of other benefits to dropping in kind of in stages. Exactly how many stages? We're actually currently looking at 2 drops, but these numbers and how long you can drop for as well, you can spend a few minutes kind of in the drop pool thinking, oh, I'm seeing where some people have gone, do I want to drop there? That whole dynamic of kind of how many, when, and what the distribution is of when players can join is something we're balancing, and it's not actually a technical constraint in terms of we can support huge numbers of players. It's more we want to make sure that we deliver something that is well balanced, fun, enables this kind of awesome idea of people dropping in that little bit later, so another wave comes in.
It's more than just a regular BR mode scaled up.
Yes,
that's the main thing.
I guess on top of that as well, of course, the other big benefit isn't exactly technical, but it is good for matchmaking, really, right? If there's kind of this more stretched out period into which you can drop into the game, it means dramatically faster. Yeah,
you can hop into an already existing game. You've not got to wait in queue times. You've not got to wait for things to fill up.
And that's really important in the Forge, of course, because while we've had a huge amount of excitement about Mavericks and we're confident we'll have a lot of players, initially we're only going to be testing it with a smaller cohort, right? And we need to do as many games as possible to make sure that Mavericks is fun to play. So it will really help with that as well, because per player we can produce more games because of the way in which they're interacting with the game. They don't have to wait, and that means simply testing more kind of varieties of gameplay, which is obviously a big part of why we're doing the Forge.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm sold on the idea. I thought there was going to be a 400 player BR mode and a 1,000 player MMO mode. Is this still the case for the MMO, or are they kind of combined now?
In the Forge, they're combined. That doesn't mean we won't have other BR-like modes, depending on popularity. We can easily support that stuff. But in the Forge, we're focusing on building a particular game type with you that brings these ideas all together.
Excellent. That was quick and easy. That's what I like. What regions are the Forge and final game servers going to be in?
Not quite yet ready to say what the final game will have. Of course, it will be across many continents. The Forge, we're currently looking at a Europe and North America deployment, so 2 deployments. Okay. That's by no means final. That's just kind of letting you know the plan as it stands right now. So it won't be kind of the full variety of deployments, but we do know the distribution of where our founders are, and kind of there's a number
where the demand is,
where the majority are. Of course, we have founders from all over the world, so unfortunately we won't get it in every territory for the first test, although you will be able to connect, of course. So yeah, just the update at the moment is that we're looking at a couple places of deployments for the initial Forge launch, and we'll expand it from there.
Excellent. How many weapons are aimed to be in by launch? Now, I suppose this is clarifying the difference between Forge and launch, because
Yes.
not
Yes.
everything is going to be in for Forge from what I've gathered.
No, and actually I don't know how many weapons will be in by launch, because we could make a lot of weapons,
Yeah,
but
thanks.
we won't just be making weapons for the sake of weapons, and that's the point of the Forge, right? We'll see what the role of each of these guns is, and that's why we're starting with just a few, and then adding and seeing how that affects the game. I would be surprised if we didn't have every gun that is a staple that
For most shooters, if you want to be able to pick something up and recognize it, and
but then again, like, we'll see what works.
What
I
gaps
mean,
need
I
filling.
might be wrong. Maybe everyone hates a particular gun that every other game has, and we just realize that it's bad.
yeah, the AK is just completely out of fashion now. Nobody wants to.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to touch that. And the Forge, we know how many are going in for the Forge.
As far as I'm aware, first week of the Forge, there's an initial 3 guns that we're evaluating with.
Okay.
But we'll be adding some more pretty rapidly after that. I'm not entirely, that might be subject to change, but that's what I think at the moment.
Okay, three's fine as long as we can find what gaps need filling is the other thing.
Yeah, we have a number more guns we've already built with previous kind of beta-like demos of the game that we could put in. I believe we've done the order of 10 different guns. So although we'll be launching with a smaller number, you'd be surprised how quickly we can add more content into the game.
Easy to get added. That's something else for the founders. If you head over to the community forums in the founder section, we've put out some skins and a poll on the skins for which ones you would personally like to see in game. Those are for the MP5 and the AK. They are legendary skins. They are big, flamboyant. They are incredible looking. So go ahead, check out the forums and vote on those as well if you would like a look at good models and such that are over there as well. This one was kind of answered in the first one, but just to expand on, where did the roadmap go, and will there be any changes to the release date of Mavericks Proving Ground, which was scheduled for the end of the year?
So the answer to whether we launch at the end of the year at the moment is simply we're going to look at the Forge and decide what we think is launch ready. Yes. Now the game is going to be out at that point.
Yeah, it's still playable.
You can play it, and it will be substantially evolved even from what we launch, of course, right now, like very shortly with the Forge launch. So there's going to be a game and it's just going to get better and better. What we call the launch and it going to, potentially to other platforms and kind of the way which you really shout loudly that, that Mavericks is, kind of out of the Forge, and we have a game type that's kind of absolutely best in class, and we're bringing online, the kind of the other game types and things like that. All these things that we're wrapping up into the kind of full launch of the game post Forge. We're not going to say, the final date for that now. We previously structured it as beta and then launch in December. That's not the structure we're going for now. So it's kind of Forge evolving to the point where, you could maybe consider it like a launch game in December, but what we say as the launch is something which we will, we'll talk about it in a few weeks' time as we've kind of shown everyone the Forge and the velocity that we're going for in the Forge and how rapidly we're developing. Once people have seen that, we'll talk about kind of what that means for when we kind of push Mavericks to these other, through these other milestones.
Okay. Where were we at? Here we are. Will footage recorded during the portion of the Forge under the NDA become releasable once the NDA is lifted?
My initial answer to that would be no. I mean, I'll have to discuss that.
The NDA is something that we will clear up a lot closer to the time.
The
as well.
idea of the initial NDA is that the first few weeks of the Forge we'll see some shifts that, if people were posting content all over the kind of internet about it, would kind of be confusing or misleading about what the game is. Because of course the first few updates are simply going to be so core that we have kind of got so little in the map initially compared to what's going to be in a few weeks after that.
The rate of iteration is one thing. As it changes from 1 week to 2 weeks, it's
you
going
kind
to
of
be a
have to
big
expect
difference.
the first few weeks of the Forge just to be this is really back to basics in many respects. Now we're looking at some core things being done in a very exciting way, and we know a lot of players in the game, and we're polishing a few things, but there'll be a lot of unpolished stuff in there. So that's why we have that NDA in the first few weeks, just because we do want people talking about Mavericks as soon as possible, and obviously we also want to be as accommodating to content creators and everyone who's spending their time in Mavericks as possible. We need those first few weeks to kind of ensure that we're setting expectations correctly with people, which means When we open it up, and you can now record footage, I would expect at the very least we would say hold on. Like if you have old footage about Mavericks, you still cannot necessarily post that, although perhaps, once the game's been fully launched, we would say, yeah, all your archive footage could now go out. You can, tell people what it was like.
Look back on how far we've come.
Once
at that
it's clear,
point.
once it's clear that we've put the right messaging out. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. So something that also gets asked a lot. The NDA isn't for the entire length of the Forge period.
No, absolutely
this
not.
isn't.
Yeah.
This is just initial kinks out of the way,
Yes.
rapid iteration. Once we reach the point where we're comfortable sharing, that is
Yes.
fine. It's not the entire period. Don't worry,
Yeah.
content creators. You're not here until December, January looking for content.
Yeah.
That's fine. Are there any plans to reintroduce the weekly developer diaries, or will these be replaced by something else, such as changelogs, release, or patch notes? Here we are.
So we were talking about the fact that we need to be pushing out weekly content to everyone. We've been doing a lot of things from a development perspective over the last couple of months. I think the roadmap we have for Mavericks and how we're going to be building it and the technology we have and the way we're building the game, they're all incredibly exciting, and we've been making sure we've got those things right. And now I think we're ready to kind of storm forward and kind of bring everyone and get them involved. What that means, of course, is that looking at the last couple of months, the regularity of communicating about what we're doing is not where it needs to be.
No.
So that doesn't mean that we'll be making Mavericks necessarily at the rate that we were doing it originally. I think that's kind of a series which has a lot of benefits, but I think it's much more effective and actually just easier for us to kind of just do community FAQs and show various shorter videos and clips of what we're doing around the office, because that means we're not kind of going between everyone and trying to piece together an episode of something.
Yeah, it's easier on both sides. People get a direct answer to a direct question that you guys are after, and it's easier for us to do in the office, and we make sure that the content we put out is things that people are actually asking for. And I think, we have heard on Reddit and YouTube and such that content, you want more communication, we do need to put out stuff, and this is something that we are heavily aware of, and it is something that we are actively working towards.
We're also building up a much larger community management and overall community team. We're expanding the company. Mavericks is a very exciting project. So over the next few months, you should see kind of more and more resource dedicated to this, and that's obviously going to make a massive difference.
Yeah, again, if you want to come work with me, you feel free to check out the Automaton Careers page. More than welcome to come and join me. I could use some company in the office. How long for duos and squads? As we did initially announce that it was just going to be solo initially, but we're aware that people do want these quite a lot.
And it's not a very difficult thing for us to deliver technically, of course. It's largely the same game with a few extra features around squads. It's a good point. I don't have a number in my head right now, just because I've really not thought through kind of what that means for our current roadmap of testing individual features. Yes. I would say that's something we want to get in relatively soon, because we know this is a game we're building for more than just solo players.
It is towards the top of the list.
Yes, I'd say it's towards the top of the list. That doesn't give me a timeline in mind, but it's definitely something we'll bear in mind, and we'll try and get back to you on that as soon as possible.
Excellent. How are you combating players using lower quality settings to gain advantage over people that want to play the game in its natural beauty? And I believe this is something Spatial OS also helps with, as far as
that's something that
terrain.
We've been doing. We've been looking at with a kind of engine perspective as well. Networking is a big part of this and what we're doing with Spatial OS, but as is kind of combining that correctly with the rendering side of things and the game engine side. We spent some time with the Crytek team in Frankfurt looking at rendering very carefully and how we render things in the distance. We have some new approaches which aren't really used by other games out there right now that enable us to render stuff very efficiently that's further away from you. And that massively ties into this problem. So I think the basic answer is that lower quality settings won't give you an advantage. For the first couple of weeks of the Forge, we may be testing all sorts of things. So perhaps there's still some things running out. But I know that the approach we're using and what we'll have will get rid of that problem.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to play in low settings and it won't give you that form of advantage. We consider that in terms of how we approach the graphics of the game.
Very important. That's, again, excellent. I'm sure a lot of people were looking forward to hearing that. What kind of tools will you be giving us so that we can officially report bugs and exploits? Again, this ties into not being able to record footage or necessarily at least release it public? How are we going to be?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We do need to talk about that process. I need to ask the right people. I think, off the top of my head, I'm not sure what the flow is for that. There'll be something which I know our UI and gameplay team will have looked at. We need to consider that. Yeah, it's a good point. We will let you know before we launch it.
There will definitely be a nice
there will
way
be a
to
process.
do it. It's not we're not just going to have a Discord channel or something like that. Don't worry about it.
No.
Will there be a ranking system in place or leaderboards?
There will be some form of progression in place even in the early parts of the Forge, because we want, to be able to recognize you for taking part in the kind of testing of the game, as well as just it's a part that makes the game fun.
Yeah.
So we will announce that shortly, just as we're about to go out with the initial Forge launch.
Okay.
There will be, some kind of initial progression system. It won't be the same as in the final game. There will be some way to translate your awards into the final game, though not necessarily directly, but yes, there will be some kind of system in place. Whether that's specifically a ranking system, I'm not sure, but we'll get back to you.
Okay. What design is the weapon handling process following, such as recoil patterns or random recoil, or a combination of both?
We support a combination of both. We've tried out combinations of both. We have the ability to also rapidly tweak any of that stuff. So the answer to that is some combination of both initially, depending on the gun. I believe Lawrence, the designer who worked on this, may have posted some stuff with the community around that.
Yeah, we have answered some of these. It may have been in the Discord, it may have been lost to the sands of time, but we can dig this out potentially. Yeah,
so give us feedback on that when you're playing with the guns. I think there are obviously different considerations about when a fixed recoil pattern is something that's fitting and it's a piece of mastery that you can do in a quite consistent way, versus the kind of randomization and other parts to the recoil and spread that all cause like slightly different effects as to whether the level of mastery of the gun versus how the game becomes fun, because you can't guarantee a hit and the different ranges. And so we have thought about all these different things, and we can tweak all of these different things. And I would definitely expect those things to change throughout the Forge based on both feedback and also
we have stats.
Statistics. We're doing a lot of data analysis on this.
Excellent. Do you know when we will either be notified who got in the early founders playtest or when it's starting? This has been somewhat cleared up earlier. The 1,000 players initial test isn't happening. This is something that could potentially be looked into a day or two before, from what we gathered. But you don't have to sit and stare at your inbox. Don't worry. An email will go out later on, but it won't be in regards to early playtesting before the 20th, as far as we're aware. What visual cues, if any, are there for hitting a shot on a player? Will there be blood indicators, hit markers, or damage numbers, or something along those lines?
We're looking at that right now, actually. The UI feedback for hitting a player, which will exist. I don't believe we have even talked about damage numbers, but that's not. It's kind of interesting because you got this realistic style of Mavericks where you wouldn't think like a loaded numbers would make sense. But at the same time, we kind of have this like AR-like operating system feel to the UI. We have a new UI that no one's seen, which is yet, and we used some sort of beta stuff before in the kind of very early footage people have seen. So you won't have seen the latest kind of UI yet. We're sharing that with you soon, and we're going for this kind of like AR feel, and it kind of would make sense to have numbers in that, but it's still a very extreme thing to do. So initially, as far as I'm aware, there are indicators.
Indicators will exist. Exactly what
and it gives you feedback. But again, like that's still kind of something we're testing, and we'll even still be testing in the Forge. So we'll see where that goes.
Okay. Final one for this one is will there be leaning mechanics? Now,
you can
I sit next to the animators, so I've seen a lot of leaning going on. So you can
lean now, I think. So yes.
Yes, I believe that is it. That about sums us up. I apologize if your question isn't here. This is something that we do want to continue doing in the future. This isn't just a one-off thing. Hopefully this becomes a consistent thing. So if you have questions, after this goes out, I'll put up a post on the forums where if you have any questions about this one or something you would like to see mentioned in a future video, drop your questions there. We'll collate questions and we'll have them ready for another video very soon, hopefully.
Fantastic.
So yeah, thank you very much for joining us, everyone.
Thank you for watching. See you soon.